Gilles. I'm head of operations at Hometer, and I'm going to talk a little bit first a bit of background on Hometer, so you understand what in what context we work and what we do, and then some more information about the data platform that we have in use right now, which I think is a good use case of digital solutions in the south and against climate change. Um, so first off about Hometer, we started 5 years ago in Burkina Faso. Um, in 2017, we restored our first hectares of degraded land. And let's say that our first partner is still our biggest partner today, which is Ecosia. Maybe you've heard of them, which is also a nice solution against a digital solution against climate change. So it's a search engine that plants trees, and they don't usually plant the trees themselves, but they come to partners like us who execute reforestation projects in the field. And so Hometer we scaled our model quite quickly. So we now work in 3 countries, and we partner with over 150 rural communities. In 2019, we started in Mali, and then in 2020 also in Senegal. Maybe quickly, what does Hometer do, and why do we do it? We battle against land degradation and desertification, which is a global phenomenon. I think we've all realized that the last couple of years. But the region of the Sahel is being hit one of the hardest in the world. For example, in Senegal, where I've been based for the last 6 months, 34% of land was recently estimated to be in a state of degradation. So that's enormous. And we fight against these types of views. And we see that desertification over the entire Sahel is a big problem. And that's also why I think the Belgian government recently had this whole, I think it was 50 million euro climate portfolio to also support this fight against desertification. So how do we do it? Quickly, we use a technically called the Vallorani technique to create these micro basins in the soil. To basically fight against the compacted and degraded soil, and to make sure that water can infiltrate again. And we try to do that mechanized and on a large scale, so that it's actually cost efficient. This is basically the first kickstart to a degraded ecosystem, and then you can start planting trees and restoring, for example, pastoral or agricultural zones. What we try to do is we try to restore native ecosystems, so really the ecosystems that were present in the Sahelian region, with a wide diversity of trees and grasses. We do that with a very heavy community involvement, so that the projects they're basically carried by the communities. We do it in a sort of equal partnership with them. We do that on what is called common land, which has a very high administrative consequences. So basically, land rights are one of the crucial parts of any reforestation or restoration project. And lastly, we do it in a long-term partnership. So we don't do it in, for example, projects of a couple of years, but we try to be a long-term partner of these rural communities. So I think that sort of captures the approach of Hometer. And when I explain that to people, in essence, it's quite simple. We say, yeah, we go and plant trees on very degraded soil to restore the land. But one message is, and what I've learned over the past 2.5 years, is that data management is really crucial, because if you work on for example, on a site like this, somewhere in a remote part in Senegal, there is an enormous amount of data that comes together. We have village data, we have contracts with these communities, there are payments that are being made. There's a whole host of activities that happens leading up to the restoration part. There are pictures, waypoints, cards, designs, satellite data, drone data, seed data, fertilizer data. There is a stock management aspect. There is monitoring data. Later on, we try to follow up on carbon sequestration, biodiversity data. So basically this simple site, you know, where we go and plant trees has a whole data aspect around it. And if what we've done is we've scaled up quite rapidly from a couple of rural communities to now 150. And so all of that has to be managed. Otherwise, you will not see the forest through the trees, as we say in Belgium, which is quite relevant here. And so what we decided to do, I think now 2 years ago almost, we decided to develop one central application, where basically a mobile application for our people in the field, so our field agents, and a desktop application for our office staff, where all of this would come together. And what's cool is that it really has become sort of the central place where not only data is being stored, but also the application sort of makes sure that we follow the right process with our villages, which I think is really important, because we need to take in a restoration project, we need to take sort of a step-by-step approach. And our application does not only collect the right data at the right time, it also helps our field agents to make sure that they follow the right steps when they're in the field. And so I don't think I'm going to go into detail on all different aspects, but there's just some screenshots here, meaning that it's sort of map based, so it integrates an aspect of, you know, geography, of course. And then there's a whole set of data that is being gathered by people in the field, which can then be collected and reviewed and sort of changed by our people in the office, which goes from the species that are used on a site to then monitoring data, to documents, to basically also a map seeing in which areas we're currently working, which areas we're prospecting, which areas are already restored. And so that is all followed up in one central application. And I don't think I don't want to go into too much detail on the application itself, but what we've seen, or one maybe lesson learned that I want to give here is that we launched it about 1.5 years ago in Burkina, the application. And one thing we've seen is that just formation and, you know, and helping people make use of the application is crucial, because we work in these very remote rural areas. And we've seen that the development of the application is one part, but then actually making sure people use it in the correct way, and that it's sort of carried by the whole organization. That was for me the biggest challenge, more than the development of the application itself. And so, I mean, let's say if you go into a digitalization journey, I would say really make sure that you try to include that from the beginning, and include the end users also while you're creating the digital solution. So yeah, so I think that was my presentation. If you want to learn more about Hometer or about our platform, don't hesitate to shoot questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gilles. Azmita, would you mind? Yes, I can see you again. I can also hear you again, I think, if you...
All right, yeah.
Yes.
Let me just share my screen. Voila, it should be running now, my presentation.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you to Marnik and Philippine for this opportunity to showcase our program, VVOB's ESCooLinks program. And ESCooLinks is an online community of practice for teachers in climate education. So if I had to say in a nutshell what the core business of VVOB is, it's to strengthen the capacity of teachers and school leaders. And that's what we also want to do in terms of related to climate change education. Well, let me take you to the next slide. Let's, for example, take this English teacher here in South Africa, Letitia. She is very passionate, interested about climate change. She wants to address it through her classroom, through her curriculum. She has some ideas of how to do this, but she would really like to maybe talk with other teachers to help her shape her ideas. So let's go to the other part of the world, for example, in Brazil, where we have Portuguese teacher Mauro, who is like Leticia very interested, and he wants to do something about it through his class, through his teaching. So wouldn't it be great if we could have Leticia and Mauro exchange with each other? But let's go even further. Wouldn't it be even greater if we could have more like-minded teachers exchange with each other and come up with a lesson plan that is tweaked to their own context? Or if we even go better, what if we could connect hundreds and thousands of teachers all over the world with each other and really, really facilitate a global exchange on climate education? So what we do here at VVUB, we use education as a strategy to battle climate change. And here, technology is one of the enablers to make this possible. So that's why we came up with a global online network for teachers in climate education called ESCHOOLINKS that can be accessed through this link, www.eschoolinks.org. So what is ESCHOOLINKS actually? Well, it is a fun and exciting interactive online tools where secondary school teachers get the opportunity to first access scientifically correct information about climate change, where they get access to documented examples of climate change teaching activities across the curriculum, where they can share knowledge on climate change and climate education with, and learn from teachers in other countries through global connections, and where they can use school climate projects as valuable resources in teaching and learning. So actually points 3 and 4 are really the key elements of the ESCHOOLINKS project. That is what we really aim to achieve with this global online exchange. And it's important to remember that it is a safe online space for teachers to learn about climate education, where inclusion of different perspectives is being encouraged and respected. Well, when we started this platform, we had to decide what technology we were going to use for this. So we set up a set of selection criteria. Well, first, it had to be user-friendly, the interface. It had to be accessible easily, and it should be free for users, and it should also be accessible on a mobile phone. The second important one was that it should have the capacity to host an unlimited number of users, like I just said. So we want to host tens and hundreds of thousands of teachers across the world. Third, it should be possible to integrate online courses on the platform. And fourth, it should be financially sustainable for VVUB. So that's why we chose to use an existing technology or application instead of building our own custom-made solution. And fifth, it should be possible to include our corporate branding. So we selected a web application called Huddle Community. And it is also, you can also download it on your smartphone through your App Store or your Google Play Store. This is a little slide to give you, just to give you an idea of how, what the interface looks like. On the left side, you see the web version of the application. Like I said, it is very user-friendly. It is very social media-like. Anyone who's ever seen Facebook or LinkedIn or any social media, it should look familiar to them. And you can write posts linked to a certain category. You can form little separate teams dedicated to a particular activity in the school. We can also provide resources, and under the resources, we can also enter the courses, we can enter events, and we also have a support and frequently asked questions function. So this is the web page, and on the right side you see a little snapshot, a little snap of the interface on a mobile phone. But using technology in itself is not a guarantee for success. Of course, there are other conditions that need to be met. And now I will take you through a couple of hurdles that we have met and how we address them, or how we plan to address them. So the first one is, well, for a global online community, you need to build a community. So you need to reach your target group. So how did we address that? We are launching PR campaigns through our international channels, but we're also linking with existing climate change education activities. For example, we had a program in South Africa called Keep It Cool, where teachers and head teachers were trained in climate education. And also we are in talks with Katholiek Onderwijs Vlaanderen, who is now transforming their geography curriculum to a climate-focused curriculum. So we offer the target groups of these programs as schoolings as a tool to sustain their climate change education results. Second, you need to establish user engagement. So that requires online facilitation, moderation, and relevant content. So we are going to mobilize members of our global team to take up a shared facilitator role. And we will collaborate with external climate change experts to provide meaningful content. Also, user engagement is established when the target group feels a sense of purpose and when they feel motivated to participate. So what we're doing is we offer access to external online events for teachers, like, for example, the events of the Office for Climate Education, Teacher Cup is one of the examples too. We also support project-based learning by offering them small grants and material. For example, we are offering digital weather stations for schools who want to use it in their STEM classes. So that is also another way of using technology in climate education. Fourth, we have faced limitations in our software functionality. And now in hindsight, we see that we would like things like automatic translation or personalized language setups, or we want to be able to embed videos or to go live. What we do now to address this is we promote translation software, or we create collaborative activities with English teachers in the schools. And on the long run, we will also discuss an upgrade, the possibility for an upgrade with the app developer. And last but certainly not the least, there is certain inequality in IT access between users, between countries, but also in IT skills. That is a tough one to solve, but we have tried to minimize the effects of these IT inequalities by considering user-friendliness and ease of access as the main selection criterion. So that is the technology behind Schoollinks in a nutshell. I want to end my presentation with an invitation to spread the word, to invite organizations to collaborate with us, to invite teachers from all over the globe to join our platform. So yeah, that was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asmita. I believe we still have Matthias. Who, yeah, there you are. You can start sharing your screen once you're ready.
I also have to share the sound. Yes.
Yep.
Let me check if that's working. Okay, I think that should be okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matthias. I'm a member of the WFP drones team of WFP. Maybe a little background about WFP. WFP is the largest humanitarian agency in the world, with working in over 120 countries and leading the clusters of emergency telecoms cluster, logistics cluster, food security cluster. And we're also the agency who is the mandate holder of the humanitarian air services. And I think that's where drones also come in, because everyone always thinks, why would WFP work with drones? WFP is a UN agency for food aid, but humanitarian air services is also part of WFP. So I would like to go into the core uses we use drones for in WFP. We use drones in imagery, so for data collection, for connectivity. When all connectivity is down in an emergency, we restore connectivity also with drones, and cargo delivery. Imagery and connectivity is handled by the technology division, which I'm part of, and delivery, so cargo delivery is part of the aviation division. I will focus mostly on imagery in this session. Maybe to talk about how it all started. We started the program with funding of the Belgian government in 2017 and 2019. And that was mostly through capacity buildings. So we did a lot of capacity buildings in different countries throughout the world. And we noticed that it was really important to do these capacity buildings to build relationships as well with these countries. They existed in 3 components: Let's Fly, Let's Map, and Let's Coordinate. But now we condense these trainings into one course of 7 days. And we call it our Zero to Hero course, where we basically bring people who never touched the drone before to actually being able to respond in an emergency. So we used drones in the past to respond to emergencies, and these emergencies are definitely because of climate change. They're tropical cyclones and hurricanes, which didn't really happen as much in the past. For example, in Mozambique, we responded to Tropical Cyclone Idai in March 2019 and Tropical Cyclone Kenneth in April 2019. And this year we responded to Tropical Cyclone Gombe, also in Mozambique, and Hurricane Fiona in Dominican Republic. Maybe to focus a little bit on some of the cyclones. So starting with Cyclone Idai, our activities in Cyclone Idai were mostly on coordination. So coordinating between drone pilots, but also coordinating on people who needed the information, and coordinating for people for the manned aviation, so that we wouldn't clash with manned aviation operations. Mostly we did assessments, damage assessments of critical infrastructure, but also logistics assessments. For example, if bridges were still intact, if roads were still accessible for food deliveries or for other reasons, and line of sight assessments for the emergency telecoms cluster to see where they could place a satellite to restore the connectivity. We also had a lot of media agencies coming to us to get communication footage. They asked for drone footage to show in the news. And we did a lot of mapping as well. We basically mapped the whole city of Beira after Tropical Cyclone Idai. And maybe I should have put this point first. Search and rescue, we also assisted with drones. Obviously not the rescue part, but the search phase of the search and rescue, where we would look for people instead of helicopters all looking for people and rescuing people. We would take over the search phase, where helicopters then focus on taking people out of the water. The outcomes of Cyclone Idai, we had over 200 flights. We mapped out the whole city, 35 square kilometers, the city of Beira. We flew over 2,700 minutes with 16 drones. We collected 1,320 gigabytes of data, almost 60,000 images. And that was to inform over 20 organizations, mostly the clusters of the emergency system, but also other organizations who needed information. So usually in an emergency, people would try to get on a helicopter and do an assessment, but now we could bring that information to the emergency operations center. So that was a big outcome out of the use of drones in Tropical Cyclone Idai. In Cyclone Kenneth, it's a little bit similar, so I'm not really going to go over this slide. Maybe noteworthy is just that we met much less, but that was due to the fact that Tropical Cyclone Kenneth was in Cabo Delgado, and the security situation is much worse there. So it's really challenging to map out, to do drone mappings in such areas. These are some pictures of the damage we could see during drone mappings. And then after the emergencies in 2019 in Mozambique, and due to the large amount of data we collected, we noticed that it was quite important that we started working on AI or machine learning, because with manual damage assessments, it would take a long time, even weeks, to actually do the damage assessment manually. So a machine learning tool would be able to speed that up much quicker. And we developed a tool called Deep, where it identifies the damage of buildings and undamaged buildings. And it can create a hot zone or a map for emergency coordinators or for national disaster management agencies to know where they can respond first. And I'm gonna show this video to show a little bit what we did in Hurricane Fiona with the use of Deep. And I hope the sound is working.
Yep.
Great.
The use of drones alongside Deep gives us a new way of how we're responding to emergencies today, particularly in countries like the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean that suffer from climate shocks. It helps us improve in agility and accuracy, particularly in the first phases of a response where we most need it.
That was the use of machine learning. Obviously, we don't only do emergency responses, we also work on emergency preparedness. And we mapped out a few river basins in Mozambique. This is the Buzi River Basin, where we mapped out 800 square kilometers to make digital elevation models. And this is, for example, a flood model we created out of those data gathered. And with those data, we can see or we can develop evacuation routes, but we can also see which houses would be affected in a flood under certain circumstances. Then recently, we also did an irrigation scheme mapping. WFP is constructing irrigation schemes in Tanzania. It's part of the regreening project and climate regreening projects to work against the climate shocks Tanzania is facing. And we did a baseline mapping there to see the impact these irrigation schemes would have after a year, for example, and we would map out every year to see the impact these projects have on the villages, but also on the agricultural land. And then we also did a research on search and rescue. I already mentioned search and rescue, just to see how drones can take over from helicopters in the search phase. But I'm also not going to go into that too deeply. And that was it. Thank you. And if you would like to know more about what we do in WFP with drones, we have a website, drones.wfp.org. Thank you very much for listening.